Thank you for coming to the final event of the Learn track at Solve. We are going to discuss perhaps the most important and intractable problem in American education, which is remaking the American high school. I'll remind you that we're in a public session now, so this is on the record. The Chatham House rules we have been employing through the earlier part of the day is now rescinded. Everything my guests say is on the record, and there are press in attendance. I would like to introduce you to my guests. In the middle is Laurene Powell-Jobs, the president of Emerson Collective and the board chair of the just-launched XQ. To my immediate left is Russlynn, the president of XQ, and on my far left is Gina Raimondo, the 75th governor of the state of Rhode Island. A warm hand, please. So this is something of a coming out party. XQ hasn't talked in very much detail about what its project is around American high schools, and I think you're going to find it both daring and innovative in the spirit of Solve. Now, I personally hate reading bios, but I know that audiences like to contextualize their guests on stage. So I'm going to ask each of my panelists just to say a little bit about what brought them to the stage and why they are so passionately interested in the subject of education. And I thought I'd begin with the governor.
Thank you. Thank you. It's terrific to be here. Specifically, what brought me to this stage was that Laurene called and said, "Why don't you join me?" And I generally try to do what she says because that's worked out well. But you know,
before that, I said, "Why don't you run for governor?"
Before that, and see where that's landed me. So, in any event, it's a great pleasure to be here. I am the governor, newly elected of Rhode Island. Been here for about 10 months. Prior to that, I was a state treasurer, and prior to that, I was in the innovation business. I was in the venture capital business, investing in healthcare startups. And I am strongly of the view that we need to bring more innovation into the way we deliver government services in every regard, but in particular in the way we deliver education to our kids. So I come to this as an innovator, as a change agent in government, also as a mother, 2 kids. I have a 6th grader and a 3rd grader, and I know from firsthand experience if what they're learning isn't relevant, they tune out. So we have to do that. But I will say my primary job as governor is to get Rhode Island's economy moving again. And in order to do that, you need skilled population. And so I come at education as starting at the top. If most of the jobs available are going to go to people that have skills and post-secondary skills, I need to create a pipeline that does that. And right now, we are not getting that job done. So we're embracing a whole bunch of innovations to redesign our schools and make them more relevant and effective so people have opportunity.
Thank you. Russlynn.
Well, I come at this education, this notion of education and public education in this country being the great equalizer. I've lived it, right? The notion that this is the most important civil rights issue of our generation, we live every day. The intersection between high school and college and elementary school, we are stuck. And bringing to bear the kind of genius that is in this room, that exists in communities today, and empowering all of us with the information and the skills to make this great equalizer something that we own for our country, for ourselves, and for closing once and for all the divide that our schools too often perpetuate. That is the achievement gap and the opportunity gap. So I come to this both as a product, having been hobbled by the gap, as somebody who, on all of the indicators we look at, whether that's first generation or growing up poor or single parent home, and knowing that the opportunities that have come after are all around being able to access quality thinking and empowerment and the confidence in one's skin that comes from that.
Thank you. And Laurene, I know that you have been passionately committed to this for decades. You have been working on a project called College Track since 1997.
Mm-hmm. Yes. About 20 years ago, I was running a natural foods company, and I was asked to speak to a class of high schoolers in our local high school about college and career opportunities, and what I thought was a one-day speech became a whole pivot for my life, and I've never left the sector. Because what I found in that classroom, they were all first-generation college-bound students, but out of the 35 students, 3 had taken the requisite classes to even apply to college. And no one even really had told them about that. And so thus began my journey to kind of peel back the onion. How could this possibly exist? You know, I lived in Palo Alto in California. I was new to the state, and I learned all about policy in the state that had led to underfunding, and I researched the communities that the students came from and met the families, and I understood that there was so much capacity and so much passion, but a lack of access to high-quality education and lack of access to information alone. Mm-hmm. So College Track set out to try to change that.
What are the most problematical structural norms that have in some case existed for decades that we've been unable to fix in American high schools?
Where do you want
Russlynn.
to start?
Yeah.
I think, as Laurene was just mentioning on the College Track students, those students took the rigorous courses that would get them into college. They took what they had access to. Mm-hmm. They took what was offered. We simply don't. Only about 50% of the high schools in this country even offer calculus, right? And if
you
you're
might
at
want
a
to
school,
say that again so people can hear.
Right?
Because this is really a surprising
only about
statistic.
50% of high schools in this country even offer calculus to its students. Here we are at MIT. When you think, I'm sorry.
So that means that when they arrive, they're placed in the situation of either failing out or having to learn in their first year of college.
For sure.
Yeah.
We can look at the college completion rates and know that students that are coming in prepared simply aren't prepared enough to get through. Look at the remediation rates, and it is shameful that students are taking in college what they should have been taught in high school.
Yeah, it varies by state, and I don't know what it is for Rhode Island, but generally between 40 and 60% of all low-income students have to take remedial courses. And so when you think about everything that students have to do to get through high school and to get admitted and enroll in college, and then to be placed in remedial courses means that it pushes out their tenure at the university or at the college from 4 years to 5 or 6 years, whereas they have financial aid or funding for 4 years. So there's an immediate structural inequity that happens.
I think we have a video to see, don't we?
Yeah, so we can this video will be really helpful for you to sort of state the case of how we got here, how the American high school was started in a very kind of enlightened and radical way 120 years ago, and it was designed for a different workforce than we have obviously today. And everything else in our lives has changed dramatically. How we live our lives, how we get from here to there, how we communicate, and yet high school has not changed whatsoever. And so, for the most part, not in any fundamental way. And so this is a good case statement that leads us into the discussion for XQ, why we formed XQ.
Teenagers have the best BS detectors on the planet. So when we say we want them to love learning, to be curious and think critically, they don't quite buy it. We actually believe ourselves when we say it. Why wouldn't we want our young people to become innovative and ethical humans? But in our hearts, we know what they've been trying to tell us for a long time. American public high school has failed to keep up. But a long time ago, public high school was a place of radical innovation. Free and accessible schooling was seen as a vital part of democracy that would guarantee equal opportunity for all. Industrialization transformed high school into a place to prepare the future workforce for new jobs in factories and large-scale farms. To ensure that everyone received fair and uniform instruction, we adopted the Carnegie Unit, which quantified learning based on the amount of time a student spends sitting in a classroom. The curriculum shifted to focus on rules, repetition, and small contained problems rather than large ones. Subjects were broken into time-based chunks signaled by a shrill bell. To prepare the teenagers of the early 20th century for factory life, we put them in a pre-factory, and that's where we've kept our teenagers ever since. In the last 100 years, as careers have moved from the industrial to the idea-driven, as global economies have risen and fallen, as women have strengthened the workforce, as the U.S. has welcomed nearly 250 million new people, as we've gone from a Model T to a Tesla and a switchboard to a smartphone, high school has stayed frozen in time. We want our students to think critically, but we make them memorize. We want intellectual curiosity, but we pad the schedule with easy courses. We want innovation, but we teach to a packet. We want self-reliance, but we force them to sit prisoner in the name of learning. Our refusal to act is costing us. America is falling behind in the world, and every year we're losing more ground. But here's the thing. We can fix this. But we have to scrap the blueprint, revolutionize this dangerously broken system. And if we do, if we can completely transform the model for public high school, we think we can change a whole lot more. If we change high school, we can change the future workforce for a complex, competitive world. We can change the poverty rate and the inequity of incarceration. We can change the broken connection between schools and communities. We can change the very building blocks of American society. If we profoundly change high school, we can reach not just the 50 million kids enrolled in public school, but the hundreds of millions who will follow them and the billions of people worldwide that they will impact. It's time to step up. It's time to rethink the model itself and truly innovate. Let's challenge the idea of bodies in seats and 500-page textbooks. Let's teach to the subject, not to the bell. Let's inspire a new kind of knowledge that's agile, creative, and endlessly relevant. Let's apply our astounding ingenuity to one of the largest public systems in the world. Let's truly reimagine what a public high school should be, partnering with the brightest talent in the country. Let's make a renewable system that works for today and tomorrow. Let's honor the beautiful promise the founders of public school made. Let's make a brave leap forward. 50 million kids need us to try. Let's build a super school.
Okay. So we'll talk about the super school in a moment, but I have a question for the governor before we do. I feel I've been hearing about the failing of American high schools for decades. This seems to be, I said at the beginning, an intractable problem. This is a market failure. So we created a system in one era based on the metaphor of the assembly line to train people to work on assembly lines. How is it possible that as a market issue, we are failing to serve children, parents, the ultimate buyers, voters, and also their employers?
Well, I think that's exactly right. I mean, at one point in time, we were creating assembly line, training people for that. Now we need to be, pumping out creators and innovators and problem solvers. And by the way, that's what I hear from employers, and that's how I come at this. So in Rhode Island, in a few years, 60% of all jobs, I'm trying to ask myself, where's the economy going? And to what Russlynn said, this is about opportunity. If you want to position people to have opportunity, they need the skills. So where the economy is going, in Rhode Island and everywhere, is the vast majority of jobs are requiring post-secondary skills, not necessarily four-year college, and people to be collaborators, problem solvers, and creators. And our schools aren't doing that now. And every time I talk to companies, which I do every day, they're complaining about it. It's absolutely a market failure. They're complaining about it. And companies are going to go to cities, states, or countries where they can have that skilled pipeline. So I want as many companies as possible to be in Rhode Island. And the way I'm going to convince them to come there is by having schools that teach that. I mean, frankly, here we are at MIT. The Massachusetts economy is floundering in many ways in places like Lawrence and Springfield and Worcester, and red hot in Cambridge and Boston. The taxes are the same all over. It's not taxes, it's talent. And so what do we have to do then to make these high schools work? We need to be teaching relevant skills. We need to be bringing corporate partners and mentors and practical experiences and people into the classroom. To me, that's reimagining high school. And we need to be relentlessly hands-on, collaborative, and really make it relevant. We also have to make sure teachers aren't doing busy work. We have to, you asked before about like restructuring. Teachers have to be professionals teaching, not doing busy work. So in any event, for me, I agree with you. It's a civil rights issue, no doubt about it. It's an economic necessity.
Governor, if it's both a economic incentive and, as Russlynn says, a kind of categorical imperative, the type of imperatives we've been talking about at Solve all week, why has it been unaddressed for so long?
Well, I don't know if it's been unaddressed.
And then you go in, please.
Yeah, so, right.
Failed to address.
Everyone has a theory here. I mean, look, it's interesting watching that because I would say we haven't changed the way we deliver government services in 100 years. It's not just education. Think about the way you interact with government. It's pretty much the same now as it was 50 years ago. Government is slow to move. Entrenched interests make it difficult. It's hard to turn around a bureaucracy. It's sometimes difficult. I would say teachers' union contracts also resemble, sometimes factory worker contracts from a long time ago. They haven't evolved to treat teachers like the professionals that they are. We have a whole system that's stuck.
That's right.
And so how did cultures and norms change? I think they change in times of crisis, and that's right now. Because if we don't meet the needs of companies, they're going to go someplace that their needs will be met.
So we're going to talk about how XQ is going to help move the crisis. But Laurene, you seem to have a hypothesis as well.
Well, actually, the governor is absolutely spot on. That it's really hard. It's really hard to change bureaucracies. It's really hard when you have government monopolies in a sector to any monopoly in a sector, to have them innovate and open themselves up to creative problem solving if they don't have to. And so everything that she just said was right. I think what we're hoping to do is be a catalyst for change, because the people in this room are not the only ones who are feeling frustrated with the intractable, calcified system that our children are all going through. We're finding communities across America are hungry for this change. And so we're hoping that to kindle thousands of flames, and we'll talk a little bit about the process.
So how are you doing that? So Russlynn, what is the XQ Super School project?
Well, if I could just follow up on Governor and Laurene's comments. The undergirding there is it is the system that needs to be liberated and changed. We have spent the better part of the last decade, at least, in the education reform conversation, fighting, pointing fingers, blaming one set of actors in it or the other. What is quite clear is that the system of the way we do high schools, that's what stuck from 100 years ago. We have the privilege of being not just around all of this genius, but in the place where the first public high school was born at the turn of the century before, as we were coming out of the War of 1812, as we were figuring out what the new economy would be for our country. We had a merchant class that demanded, and a movement was born to earn the right to access that thing that was called higher education then. As we saw on the video, about 100 years ago, we had to usher in a new economy, and that was the industrial age. We are at that point again. 65 students are going into a world where 65% of the jobs that they will have don't exist today. We don't even know the names of the jobs that our young people will end up having. So what XQ, the spirit of XQ?
One last point, if I may. The other very difficult complication in education is that the governing unit is exceedingly dispersed and localized. So there are 15,000 school districts across America. So we need change in 15,000 places. That's why a lot of people have come to us and said, well, this particular school has innovated beautifully. This school is delivering for all students in a very equitable way. And there are remarkable schools that are having great outcomes for students, but what we need across America is a common will across all 15,000 of these school districts.
And is
sorry, keep going about XQ.
And is the idea behind the Super School project to raise up experiments, to fund them, and to use them as models that could be used more broadly across those 15,000 school districts?
In part.
Yeah.
The reason why I wrestle a little bit with saying an affirmative yes to that is because these models that were emerged, they come from communities for communities. Our first objective is to empower and inform, right? As the governor spoke in the beginning, talking about being a mother with 2 young children, and Laurene and we often talk about this, our most precious resource is not our children, yes, right? Everyone that does, it's their most precious resource.
It's mine.
You got to say that.
Well, many of the Solve audience saw my daughter today in the pavilion, so they know.
Laurene and the governor are sending their children to a school that, just like parents across the rest of the country, no matter how great that school is or not, they actually don't know what happens, right? Goes into a black box. We spend over 50% of every state's budget on education in this country, or thereabouts. Yet we, average, everyday Americans and folks living in this country, seeking the best opportunity for ourselves and our families, we don't know what happens when they go, and we don't know how those dollars are spent. We don't know what they're spent on. We don't know how the system works. So what we've tried to do is taking and standing on the shoulders of so many leaders and researchers and amazing educators that are around the country doing these amazing things that Laurene talked about. We are trying to take that, all of their rigor, and make it palpable and digestible and inform communities through the process of this design competition. There are 3 phases of it. We think of them as discovery, develop, and design. They are about starting with students at the center and building systems around student needs for this world that they are going into now. The design competition is at the center of this, but as you said, Jason, if it was just about the few schools that will emerge, that we embark on this journey with, to see them develop and manifest,
then we'd lose.
Right,
That wouldn't change anything.
Right? It has to be about scaling and replicating, but not these exact models, because we know there is no one size that fits all in this. And it's also not top down, but with the amazing courage and creativity of leaders like Governor Raimondo, what we are hoping to do is spread those models, amplify them, inform and give cover to the folks that are wrestling to change the system today.
Well, Laurene, this is actually a more radical idea merely than funding a few innovation schools, a few experiments.
I hope so.
It presupposes, it presupposes that there is no one single model.
That's
right.
And that schools must be liberated to try what works for them.
Exactly right.
And that could be a model for experimentation across the country.
It could be, yes, and the other thing that we're hoping to do is open source all of this learning and have people, researchers, teachers, parents, students also self-publish their best practices and also their mistakes so that everyone learns from everyone else. And MIT is as good at that as anybody on the planet. So in fact, we're really hoping to have some good connections with you going forward. But I think the other aspect of what we're doing is we're nesting the design thinking in the learnings of the discovery module, so that every community has to first go and talk to students and listen to students and understand a little bit about brain science and the adolescent brain. Well, I mean, that's a big mystery, but at least there is some insight into that, like how are brains developing and how much more students' brains actually grow when they make mistakes and when they're struggling with something than if they know an answer, if they're fed an answer. And then also mapping that onto the workforce demands currently and in the future, and really having each community come together and understand how to put students at the center of their design. These are some of the voices that we're collecting.
This might be a good opportunity to hear some of the voices.
Yeah. So I don't know if people have seen what we call the cube outside of this building, but we're going around the country to different communities, and we're asking students and parents and teachers and business leaders, really anyone, to come and give us their ideas, give us their inspirations, tell us what they think would work and what doesn't work. And these are some examples of people just recently who've recorded their ideas for us.
And I feel like the system that I work in, the school system, it's kind of like a box, and we have to fit everyone in that box. And if you don't fit in that box, then you're left as an outlier, and you're seen as unsuccessful.
I just want to point out, before anything else, is that a lot of the students that get into big name school, they come from a background where they did college, like cancer research or different internship with industry. But the thing is, the kids who didn't do that, it doesn't mean that they're not as talented or not as creative or not as smart. It's just that they didn't have the opportunity. And if we provide them with the right resources and skills, just imagine how incredible the next generation of students will be. Take me, for example. I'm here.
Wow.
She is.
There she is. Governor, you are on the ground. You hear the voices of students and their parents demanding change. What have you learned works, and what hasn't worked in Rhode Island?
Yeah, so I completely agree with Russlynn that we've spent an awful lot of time in the past decade fighting. And it's been, this whole area of education reform has really been marked by us versus them. Yeah. Really, if you think about it. Unions versus reformers, charter schools versus non-charter schools. And I'm hopeful that we're ready to move beyond that and say, okay, this is a real, like I said, economic imperative, almost a crisis point. This country is not producing thinkers, problem solvers, innovators, creators. That's what the economy needs. And so I believe it's time to move to we're all in this together kind of a rhetoric and say it's on everybody. It's on parents, it's on teachers, it's on governors, it's on companies to dig in and reform and innovate in schools so that young people have the skills they need. So the first thing, I think, is to start from that place. Like, we have a problem. Let's be real. It's huge. It's in everyone's interest to solve it. And now let's get to the business of fixing it. But my own view is having that kind of rhetoric is the beginning place, because if you start with the us versus them, well, half people stop listening. And it's also the reality. It's like the magnitude of the problem. I also think, from my perspective, I've been governor for about 10 months, we've done a few very specific things that I think will have enormous impact. And it goes all along to what Laurene's view is. Let's reimagine the high school experience. So just one thing we've done is it's called Prepare RI. And we say, okay, we want to reimagine high schools. High school isn't just showing up, doing your classes, and then figuring out what comes next. We are going to make it so that every kid in a public high school in Rhode Island can take college classes starting in their sophomore or junior year for free while they're in high school, and such that if you hustle enough, you ought to be able to get out of high school with an associate's degree or with a number of college credits so that maybe you can get through 4-year college in 3 years or community college in 1 year. And we've made it incredibly easy to do that. Like course catalogs from colleges online, free. No more $200 per class, which is what it used to be. Now that might not sound like a huge innovation. It's a big deal because it's going to start people thinking in high school, what do I need? Like, that's what this is all about. People learn when it's relevant to them to learn. So that's, one simple example. But I think we have to do much more of that. We're starting another program right now where we're getting companies to work in partnership with high schools. So starting from 9th grade, right away, 9th grade, you're going to be in a high school. A company is going to be sponsoring certain programs. You're going to have a summer internship at that company. You're going to have a mentor. It's a 6-year program. Right there, reimagining high schools, not 4 years, it's 6 years. You're going to come out with an associate's degree, 4 years of mentorship, 4 years of summer programs, and a first line for their job at that company. So these are just, practical things so that if you're a kid and you're at home and you're struggling with math and you're wondering, why should I care? The reason is because it's going to get you a job. That's why you should care. It's going to get you that job, and it's going to let you be like your mentor, and it's going to get you through. These are the kinds of things I think we have to think about.
I'm going to take some questions from the audience after I've asked a couple of more. If you raise your hand, my staff will come and they'll give you a piece of paper and you can write down your question, and we'll call upon you to ask them. I'll also be taking questions from live stream over Twitter. I'm Jason_Pontin. That's Jason_Pontin. And if I like your question, I'll read it out on air. It's really smart. Laurene, so we've been talking very pragmatically as pragmatic people about the economic need to empower children, why society needs us to reimagine American schools. But I know you also believe that there is a social justice component to it, that we also have an obligation to offer the kind of equality of opportunity to everyone in a school system, and that our current school system, whether we like to admit it or not, absolutely leaves communities behind.
It does. And certainly our democracy requires an educated citizenry. And thus, this entire system was born so that our citizens could use the education system as their portal of opportunity. And that portal worked for me. It worked for many of the people in this room. But it does not work equally for all. And it's established to work equally for all. We have a persistent high school dropout rate, which is around 1.2 million students a year who end up dropping out of high school, which is an unbelievable number. It's about 7,000 to 8,000 students a day. It's really just a stunning fact. There's students in minority groups who finish high school with the skill levels of students in other groups, white generally. 13-year-olds, this is the NAEP comparisons. Huge, we know about these huge educational gaps. The only predictor of income mobility in our country is educational attainment. And so, obviously, now that we're second to last in OECD countries in social and income mobility, that's because educational attainment is reserved for the upper classes and not for everybody else. The greatest predictor of your educational attainment is the educational attainment of your parents. That's how it is in our country right now, and that we cannot, I mean, first of all, we won't have a vibrant, robust economy, but also just as Americans, we should not tolerate this. These are some of our global statistics.
I came from a very different educational background, as some people may hear in my voice, where we are selected at a very early age for success. We are put into tracks, particularly at private schools, that will deliver us ready-made to universities like Oxford and Cambridge, where we are expected to govern. This does produce a highly educated elite, but it sounds to me as if you're suggesting that that system is fundamentally repugnant to the American democratic ideal.
It is. No question. That's what our whole, yes. I think everyone would find that repugnant. I'm surprised that everyone in your country doesn't find it so.
Well, they do. I raise it for a question, though, because what I'm leading to is, what if the problem isn't in our outmoded schools? What if the problem is more fundamental to American culture? What if, as parents and as citizens, we don't place enough emphasis on education? And how should we fix that?
It certainly is a cultural issue, but your question also has a little bit of finger pointing in it, right? Yeah. That it's the parents, that it's the families, that it's the young people that don't value this education enough to consume it. No matter how much I wanted to consume it, I wasn't going to get physics. It wasn't offered in my school. It wasn't offered in my district. Maybe for a few of the kids that could transfer out, it was. There is something systemic in the way that we produce the cultural norms that then we blame for the resulting outcomes and the data. So we know that we can't fix this, one of the largest public systems in the world, without a culture change. But a little bit of who starts it.
I'd like to add to that a little bit. In my 18 years of working with students and parents, we've worked with over 3,000 students who are all first-generation college-bound. Many are first-generation high school graduates. I have never met a parent who did not want their child to go to college.
That's right.
And I have never met a student who didn't believe in his and her own potential, but they didn't have the support system and actually the roadmap to get there. I think for many first-gen parents and many low-income parents, it's a little daunting to be an education activist. I think also we're talking about parents who are juggling multiple jobs and multiple responsibilities, and they can't get to the school in the middle of the school day, and they may not overlap with their student at the end of the day and be able to help them with their homework. And so we need to make sure that school works for every single student. That's the public contract. That's our social contract with students and families in our country.
And we're not doing well by anybody. Those international data, we can look at our highest performing kids, and they are fledgling when compared to their peers across the rest of the world. Other countries are outpacing us. So even if it somehow worked to keep our, I moved that slide because I noticed among is spelled wrong and I didn't want to keep focusing on it. It's the first time I noticed that.
There we go.
There, thank you.
Thank you.
Our team is like, really? Sorry. But we are not doing well by anybody. And as the governor mentioned early on, in order for our economies to change, we have to start redoing and rethinking the way we educate all our kids, even our currently highest performing ones.
Let's take some questions from the audience. I have a question from live stream. What will be the criteria, Laurene Jobs, Tob Hoffman asks, to measure innovative schools to track success?
I assume he's talking about the criteria for it XQ. And I'm happy to talk about the process, although since Russlynn runs XQ, I'm going to punt it over to her because she actually, it's probably something that's interesting to the audience. We can very briefly talk about the next 8 months in the XQ competition.
So we're hoping to get concepts due by about November 15th. That is not a hard deadline. And by about February 1st or so, we will ask folks to submit their applications for those first 2 modules. And from there, with a team of nearly 80 right now, some of the best minds for judges across a variety of sectors in this space, we will work to select about 50 or so to do that final the develop stage, which is really about the tough infrastructure work that it takes to make a school and that kind of system transformation. And again, we expect those models to come to light and us to support them for the next 5 to 10 years. But there are no winners and losers in this competition. And that is because, as Laurene mentioned, we want to open source and inform everybody interested in becoming a change agent for their school and for their community. And that ought to be every person who lives in this country.
Will you make all the applications publicly available so that they can be sifted for ideas?
We certainly will make all of those ideas publicly available. We will respect the privacy of applicants in any way that's appropriate and necessary. But we absolutely want to, look, we have, in 3.5 weeks, we have nearly 4,000 applications started across the country. I know,
That means
right?
4,000 teams are starting across the country.
Oh my God.
Which is far
Amazing.
greater than I thought.
Yeah.
We were saying
It's a
maybe
big- clearly a need.
400 by
Clearly a
about
need.
February, right? So
So-
that just says to us there is a hunger for change in this, and we want to inform and empower, and we want to stand on the shoulders of really courageous leaders that are thinking through how to take some of these ideas and make them at scale. You have 45 high schools, yeah?
Right. I mean, I think this is unbelievably fantastic, and if you already have 4,000, that's clearly the need. The challenge, of course, is, you know, in my state alone, small state, 1 million people, you know, we spend, the state, $1 billion a year on public education. So that's the fat part of the curve. So this is awesome, and it's great. The question is, how do we take the vast majority of our money that we spend and make it highly effective? And by the way, in government in general, rarely is the question asked, what are we getting for our money? Right? Not just education. You spend $15,000 a year to educate a kid. what are you getting for that?
Right.
And what should you be doing? What shouldn't you be doing? Because you're not getting a good return on that investment. And I'm trying to bring that philosophy throughout state government because I think it's necessary. And this innovation is terrific, and you can believe that Rhode Island is going to be competing. But at the end of the day, it's the whole darn state. No, I'm just kidding. The schools are already, we want to be there. But the thing is, the real home run here is, okay, how do we take this $50 million and then drive change with multi-billions of dollars?
Yes.
I'm getting amazing questions online, and I think Chris Shipley, the executive producer of Solve, has questions in the dim shadows underneath the lights that are shining in my eyes. Chris.
Yeah, we have some amazing questions. I'm going to try to group them, and since we were just talking about measurements and how you will measure the results that come in, I'm going to ask you, or kind of group these two questions about measurement. It says here, do you think that the measurements that are adopted to compare or to rate student performance are actually relevant today in terms of the demands of the community and of jobs? And might we, combining these two questions, really look at what we are measuring to be sure that it is meaningful and that those mechanisms are actually driving to the kind of results we want?
I don't know any parent or any young person that actually does not want to know how they are performing and where they are relative to the standards and the goals that we have set for what we need to know and be able to do at every grade level. Yet we somehow continue to blame the assessments or focus on the assessments, or as if the test, the assessment, is the problem. It ought not be. We need to measure performance, no doubt. We need to do that in very, very smart ways. But as one of your great community leaders said today, your state chief, standards does not have to mean standardization, right? It ought not move into this drill and kill notion of test prep that exists in far too many places. That's because we're thinking about the measurement wrong, and we're using it to drive classroom instruction and change in ways that don't help young people. These assessments, if we are teaching in the relevant and rigorous ways, the assessment results show and demonstrate that learning. Focusing on them as the only indicator of whether our schools are doing their job does a disservice to us all. In ignoring them or opting out from them does perhaps a greater disservice, because it's ironic that we often talk about in the education world that we actually want to be quite ignorant. If we don't want to look at what we are measuring, if we don't want to be able to compare schools, if we don't want to, we are taking away the information that will drive the continuous improvement and drive the productivity and efficiency that the governor talks about.
Yes.
Other questions?
So I'm going to aggregate a number, again, that are talking about the students who might not be a college track student, a student who might choose another option than to go to college. And so there are a number of questions about other kinds of direction for those students, whether that's through journeymanships or apprenticeships, and how we might think about the education beyond a sort of pure job training model that often stigmatizes those students who choose not to go to college.
I'm happy to start, and then both of you would probably like to jump in. I think that the days of trade and vo-tech versus college prep are over. Everyone in this country should have the opportunity to master all the fundamental literacies, and then use that as the platform upon which they become lifelong learners and nimble, creative problem solvers, and take on projects of their passion and projects that they find most stimulating and relevant to them. So I think that what we want to do is offer the opportunity to every individual to choose the path that they want to take. What we don't want to do, which is being done today, is closing off that opportunity and choosing for them because they're interested perhaps in a trade or a craft, and we're choosing for them their future that may involve higher education. So I think that every single student would benefit from real-world experience. So the integration of internships. We've seen some models in the Cristo Rey schools, if any of you are familiar with them, where students go to school 4 days a week and they have real internships 1 day a week, and they get remarkable experience, and then they learn presentation skills, they learn collaboration skills, and then there's schools that integrate research from the 9th grade into the curriculum, which is also understanding the scientific process is really important for anyone, no matter what they choose to do in their lives. So we're talking about actually a whole platform of fundamental knowledge that everyone gets exposed to.
I think Laura Wilson. Chris still has all the questions?
I'm so in control
You
of
are
the question.
still in control, as you should be, Chris. Please.
So I don't know if this is a question so much as a comment, but it has come up on a number of these sheets that say to attract the first rate of college graduates to become high school teachers, we need to pay them better, much more like stockbrokers. How do you see us addressing what many people see is we have this high value in education, and yet the people that we are putting on the front lines of education are not necessarily valued as highly as we say?
That is a great question.
Yes,
I agree with that.
Yes, they need to be paid much better.
Yeah, I agree.
You talk about inequalities in education based upon location and the amount we pay teachers.
Yeah, I think we need to pay teachers more, but it's not just pay them more. Like what I was saying earlier about some of these union contracts are quite old-fashioned. It's as if they took a coal miner contract and made it a teacher contract,
It's a labor contract.
It's a labor contract. And teachers are professionals, ought to be treated that way, ought to be paid that way, ought to be provided support that way, ought to be given coaching and professional development opportunities and held accountable. So I totally support that. And that's why I said earlier, and cut down on their busy work. And I would argue if we spent less money on some of the administrative layer of our public education system and put it at the point of instruction, we'd even have the money to do that for teachers.
So, Governor, those of you who have followed your career know that you've been involved in restructuring the public sector in Rhode Island. How would you go about in your state such a radical restructuring of the teaching force so that they were treated as professionals?
Well, we're starting to think about it right now. We are thinking about things like a statewide teacher contract. Well, one thing, just to put this in perspective, as I say, I'm a believer in innovation. Rhode Island is the perfect petri dish of innovation. We have 300 school principals. It's a manageable, it's 45 high schools. It's a manageable place where you can really start to experiment. R&D. Yeah, R&D, exactly. It can be R&D. So things like a statewide teacher contract or a very different teacher contract are a little bit more doable in Rhode Island than maybe, say, in California, just because of the scale that we operate. But anyway, none of this is going to happen until we first make the case to the people and they believe us that it is vitally urgent that we make these changes and it's relevant for every person. But I think we're there. I mean, my own view is the forces are there because as the rest of the world and the rest of the economy is innovating at so much more of a rapid rate, the gap between the lack of innovation in the public sector and the rest of the world is so big, I think people feel that, and finally people are seeing, oh my goodness, we've got to change.
I should declare an interest. I have a son in public school here in Boston. It's an amazing school. The Paul Revere School, the Elliott School downtown. It is so extraordinarily under-resourced, though. Wonderful teachers, passionately committed to improving the life of my boy and everyone else, and yet they don't have the tools. So here's a question from Ryan Murphy online that speaks directly to me. He asks, how does Solve Learn fit in? And how can the people out in this room and those who are members of the Solve community get involved in XQ America?
Okay.
Great question.
Yeah. That's a nice one. Both joining that matching directory, making yourself, yes. So we have about 5,000 people now in the matching directory. What this is a tool for the self-assembly, where you can find, it asks you for your skills and your interests, and it helps coalesce the teams. You can enter your zip code. You'll see the 166 folks in Boston that are, or in this Boston region, that are a member of this directory so far. It is also not just about your local community, though. You are the best minds on the hardest issues, right? When we think through STEM and emerging economies. So making yourselves available to share that knowledge, to share that experience, to share your skills with folks around the country that are trying to struggle through these issues, and becoming a virtual member of a team is also a very exciting possibility. To make one yourselves, to be a part of. We spent the afternoon with some of the most amazing young people that I've seen in a very long time, and they were freshmen from here, right? They, with very different backgrounds, but equally committed and eager to ensure that the opportunities they have, they provide and share with their peers across the rest of the country. Having the brain power and the elite nature of this institution digging deep in redesigning our public high schools, it is with that we get real change. The system of 100 years ago, it was created because Harvard and Yale, the elite universities, adopted this thing called the credit hour. That made the Carnegie Unit, that made the chunks that we were teaching in high school, those blocks of time, work. Otherwise, they wouldn't have. So it is the higher ed institutions that have to be, and the elite among them, that drive the system change at the K-12 level, so that exit requirements at the end of high school match entry requirements as folks are coming into any college, but especially some of the most renowned in our world, like MIT. So thinking out of the box on how we can create models of rethinking the entry requirements, how we assess alignment between K-12 and higher ed, how we prepare students to meet these new requirements, and then how we challenge and change our systems to ensure that we graduate students with the skills they need and provide the access and opportunity for all. We are sitting today. MIT is making itself available and accessible on the master's degree level for folks that don't come to this institution. That is remarkable. And when institutions like this have the courage to do these out-of-the-box things that make this niche of intellect that we've reserved for so few actually available to all, you give permission to folks around the country to think out of the box too. So here, and let's keep it up. But without you driving this, without you laying the standard for how we all need to be thinking about college entrance and college success, we're not going to get it done.
I'm going to allow Chris to choose a final question for Laurene Powell Jobs. But before I do, a question for the governor. You just talked very eloquently. you just talked very eloquently about making the case to the electorate that this was not only economically necessary, but also a social good. How do you tell, as an elected official, how do you tell the people of Rhode Island this is doable?
That's an interesting question. How do you tell them it's doable?
And they should have faith in the government to do it.
To make public schools work, you mean?
Yeah, to be a partner with government to make them work.
Well, first of all, I think there are in some places it is working. You know, so you can point to obvious successes, which are there. Secondly, it used to work. Yeah. But also, I think you got to chunk it down. So, for instance, what we're thinking about is we're thinking about different programs in the urban core. Back to the no one size fits all. We're thinking about certain challenges in the urban core where the graduation rate is unacceptably low, and we're going to tackle that. I think you got to chunk it down to certain issues. The remediation issue. Too many of our students who are going to our community college need remediation. So they do what Laurene said. They show up at our community college. They have maybe 2 years of Pell Grants to get through community college. They use up those scholarships on general education to do the remediation. And then they're out of money, and they don't have a degree. That is a concrete problem that I'm going to try to fix, in part by using technology. Is that like time's up? That's the bell. That's the school bell. Yeah. So in part by using technology in the summer and the year before they enter. In part by making it not one size fits all. You know, right now there's this, I think, outdated AccuPlacer test where, you know, the truth of the matter is you might need help in one area of math and I might need help in another area of math, and we shouldn't be in the same general ed class, and you should take some online class before to help you what you need, and I should help you with what I need. What's my point? My point is we're going to set up discrete problems and put out discrete solutions and over time show results, and that's how you get to convince people, yeah, this is going to work. We're just going to do it. Like right now, I've been governor for 10 months. 10 months I've been governor. In those 10 months, I've made full-day kindergarten universal for the people of Rhode Island. They said we didn't have the money. We have it now. It's a reality. We put out a whole new scholarship program called, it's a new program. It's a last dollar scholarship. And as a result of it, half of the students going to our community college are going for free. So that's a concrete thing. And we just rolled out this program I just told you about dual and concurrent enrollment, allowing kids in high school to get college credits for free. When I took office, I inherited a $200 million budget shortfall. They said we had no money. Those are 3 concrete examples we've gotten done in 10 months. So I think people should think we're getting things done. It's possible. We're doing it.
Well, the one other thing that's great about the governor is that when she was treasurer, she pulled off something that almost no one else in this country could have done, which is pension reform. And she held town halls around Rhode Island. And I remember we were talking to her, and I said, how did you communicate this, it's math, not politics message? And she said, well, I pretty much talked to 1 million people, which you can do in Rhode Island.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. No, that's true.
And by the end, I read this, by the end, what percentage of the population of the electorate supported the pension reform? It was some fantastic...
The majority, the majority. You got to make the case to the people.
Yeah.
And I think the same is true in education. Stop the fighting, get to the business of problem solving, because we need it.
Chris, do you have one spectacularly smart question?
They are all spectacularly smart questions. And so I think what we'll do is gather them up and post them on the Solve member site and hope that it will also open up a dialogue for the whole room. My favorite question must have been written by a high schooler asking that you help reimagine the massive amounts of homework that are required. But I think this is a good one to end on. Because we are a group of solvers. The question is, what are the specific needs at the moment? And I'll make this a question from us all. How can we get involved?
Well, I think Russlynn sort of answered that question about certainly around XQ, about joining a team, about being a thought leader in the sector, about being a resource for other teams, about leading a team, which is very exciting. And I think there are other ways just in all of your networks, in all of your social circles, to spread the word, because this change happens community by community, and we have 15,000 of them in our country that we actually need people to be empowered and be agents of change. So we need everyone to use all of their networks as appropriate and really get people activated.
So this is the spirit of Solve. XQ is exactly what we talked about when we began to talk about problem solving that was fiercely democratic, that served the entire world, not just the lucky few, and sought new solutions that threw away the old game and began to look at novel ways of doing it by outsourcing the problem to the folks out in the world and here in the audience today. So thank you, all three, for your commitment to this wonderful effort.
Thank you.
Those of you who are solving with us still, we will meet again in the pavilion at 9 o'clock, not 8, tomorrow morning. Those of you who are going on to dinners tonight, grab one of my staff. You can tell them because it says staff on the back of their T-shirt, and they'll tell you where you're going. Thank you very much.